why are you crying like this for him? I already told you, he was an old friend.
An old friend. Rowan, please don't do this right now.
Honestly, that should have been the moment Rowan understood something was terribly wrong, because people cry at funerals every day. But there's a difference between grief and devastation. And what Celestine showed that afternoon beside another man's coffin didn't look like ordinary grief at all. If you enjoy emotional breakup stories filled with betrayal, hidden affairs, shocking confessions, emotional manipulation, and painful truths that destroy relationships from the inside, welcome back to Breakup Diaries. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, how emotional is too emotional for just a friend? The car fell silent again afterward. Not comfortable silence. Heavy silence. The kind couples create when both people suddenly realize they are no longer having the same conversation. Rowan glanced toward Celestine again. Her makeup was ruined slightly beneath her eyes. Her breathing still uneven. And somehow, that bothered him more than the tears themselves. Because during 15 years of marriage, Rowan had only seen his wife break down like this twice. Once when her father died, and now for another man. What exactly was he to you? Rowan asked carefully. Celestine swallowed hard immediately. You're making this weird. No, Rowan replied calmly. I think I'm finally noticing things I ignored for years. That was when she stopped looking sad and started looking afraid. The drive home from the funeral felt longer than it actually was. Celestine kept staring out the passenger window, while rainwater crawled slowly across the glass beside her face. Rowan drove in silence for almost 10 minutes before speaking again. What was his full name? That question hit harder than she expected. She turned slowly toward him. What? The man from the funeral. Rowan kept his eyes on the road. What was his full name? Celestine hesitated. Tiny pause. But enough. Adrian Mercer, she answered quietly. Rowan nodded once. And suddenly, something clicked in his memory. Not fully. Just enough to make his stomach tighten. Because he had heard that name before. Years ago. Back when they first got married. There had been an old storage box in their apartment closet filled with random college things. Photos, receipts, letters. And one night while helping clean, Rowan remembered seeing a birthday card signed. Always yours, Adrian. At the time, Celestine laughed it off casually. College nonsense, she called it. Rowan never thought about it again. Until now. That night, while Celestine showered upstairs, Rowan quietly searched Adrian Mercer online from his laptop. And there he was. Successful architect. Recently deceased. Survived by no wife or children. Then Rowan noticed something else. The funeral photo being shared online wasn't recent. It was older. At least 6 years old. And standing beside Adrian in the picture, smiling directly at him, was Celestine. Not casually beside him either. Close. Too close. The kind of closeness couples have when they already belong emotionally to each other. Rowan stared at the screen for a long time, then slowly leaned back in his chair. Because suddenly, his wife's grief no longer looked confusing. It looked personal. Rowan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that photo again. The way Celestine looked at Adrian. Not friendly. Not casual. Intimate. The next morning felt disturbingly normal. Celestine still made coffee. Still folded laundry. Still moved around the kitchen, pretending their conversation yesterday never happened. That irritated Rowan more somehow, because people acting normal after emotional explosions usually meant they were hiding something deeper. Finally, while she stood slicing fruit near the sink, Rowan spoke quietly. "How long did you know Adrian?" Celestine froze slightly before continuing. "A long time." "How long?" She sighed heavily now. "Before you." That answer immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. "Before you. Not college friend. Not old acquaintance. Before you." Rowan leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. "Why do I feel like I'm learning about my wife from a dead man's funeral?" Celestine put the knife down harder than necessary. "Because you never asked." That response genuinely stunned him. "You think this is my fault?" "I think people only hear what they want to hear." Gaslighting always sounded calmer than people expected. That was what made it dangerous. No screaming. No obvious lies. Just small shifts in blame until the other person starts questioning their own reality. Rowan laughed softly under his breath. "So let me understand this correctly. You break down crying over another man, and somehow I'm the one who missed something." Celestine crossed her arms immediately. "You're making this uglier than it was." "Was, not is." That single word sat heavily between them. And Rowan suddenly realized something terrifying. His wife wasn't denying emotional attachment. She was only trying to minimize it. 3 days later, Rowan found the letters completely by accident. At least that was what he told himself afterward. Celestine had asked him to grab old tax folders from the garage storage shelves while she visited her sister. A simple task. But while searching through dusty boxes, Rowan noticed a small black container shoved behind winter decorations. Locked. That alone was strange. Celestine never locked anything. And somehow, instinct already knew what was inside before he forced it open. Letters. Stacks of them. Some old. Some newer than expected. All addressed to Adrian Mercer. Rowan sat on the garage floor reading in complete silence, while his entire marriage slowly changed shape around him. One line hit hardest. "Sometimes I hate myself for marrying stability instead of love." Rowan physically stopped breathing for a second after reading it. The letter was dated 11 years ago. 3 years into their marriage. Another letter described secretly meeting Adrian during a business conference in Chicago. Another mentioned missing him after hearing their song in a grocery store parking lot. And suddenly, Rowan understood why Celestine reacted so violently at the funeral. Because Adrian wasn't just an old lover. He was unfinished emotionally. The relationship she never emotionally buried. That night, Rowan placed one letter quietly on the kitchen counter before Celestine came downstairs. The moment she saw it, all color disappeared from her face immediately. "Rowan." "How long?" he interrupted calmly. She swallowed hard. It wasn't like that. That sentence almost made him laugh. Because cheating always becomes complicated once exposed. Never before. Before exposure, people know exactly what they're doing. Celestine slowly sat down across from him, looking emotionally exhausted now. Then finally whispered the sentence that destroyed everything completely. "I never stopped loving him." The confession changed the marriage instantly. Not loudly. Quietly. That was the terrifying part. Because after Celestine admitted she never stopped loving Adrian, Rowan no longer looked at their life the same way. Every anniversary suddenly felt fake. Every family photo felt staged. Even ordinary moments became poisoned retroactively. The next few days turned painfully tense inside the house. They still shared space, still ate dinner, but emotionally, the marriage already sounded hollow. One night, Rowan finally asked the question, destroying him internally. Did you ever love me, or was I just available? Celestine looked wounded immediately. That's unfair. No, Rowan replied quietly. Unfair is finding out your wife mourned another man harder than she ever fought for her own marriage. That line hit her hard, but not hard enough to stop the truth anymore. And honestly, Rowan hated how calm he sounded now. Because anger meant there was still hope somewhere. This felt colder than anger. This felt like realization. Then things became worse unexpectedly. At a neighborhood dinner party that weekend, someone casually mentioned Adrian's funeral during conversation. A woman laughed awkwardly afterward and said, honestly, everybody thought Celestine and Adrian would eventually end up together. The entire table went silent immediately. Too silent, and Rowan noticed something horrifying in that moment. Nobody looked surprised. People looked uncomfortable, meaning they already knew the history. He was the only one who apparently never understood how deep it actually went. Public humiliation always hurts differently when people pity you quietly. That night, Rowan sat alone downstairs replaying everything in his head, while Celestine cried upstairs. But strangely enough, her tears no longer moved him the same way anymore. Because once someone admits you were emotionally second place for years, you start questioning whether the relationship ever belonged to you at all. A week later, Rowan finally packed a suitcase. Not dramatically. No screaming. No threats. Just quiet exhaustion after too many truths arrived too late. Celestine stood near the bedroom doorway watching silently while he folded clothes into the luggage. You're really leaving? She asked softly. Rowan paused briefly before answering. I think you left this marriage emotionally years ago. That sentence broke something in her immediately. She sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, tears forming again. But even then, Rowan noticed something painful. Her grief still didn't fully feel connected to him. It still felt connected to Adrian. Like his death had finally exposed emotions she spent years suppressing badly. And suddenly Rowan understood the cruelest part of all this. Adrian's death didn't destroy their marriage. It revealed the truth about it. The next morning, Celestine called repeatedly after he left. Text after text. Voicemails. But Rowan ignored every single one. Because some betrayals aren't physical. Some are emotional investments placed somewhere else, while your partner unknowingly builds a life beside you. Weeks later, Rowan heard through mutual friends that Celestine had stopped going out socially. Stopped posting online. Stopped attending gatherings. People whispered about the marriage quietly now, especially after rumors spread about her history with Adrian. And honestly, that public humiliation finally forced her to confront something she spent years avoiding. She didn't just lose Adrian. She lost the man who stayed loyal while living in another man's shadow. And by the time she realized that fully, Rowan was already emotionally gone. Be honest, what hurts more? Physical cheating or discovering your partner emotionally belonged to someone else the entire relationship? This is Breakup Diaries. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you on the next one.